Okay, so the story so far, I had to come up here to do this as usual, but I also forgot what month it is. We're entering April of 1807, I do believe. So the French have defeated both Austria and Prussia. Treaty of Tilsit's in place. The Prussian War was not as successful as it might have been. Westphalia did not get created, but Poland and Saxony have switched hands. I have to do some meditating on the roles, I guess, in terms of whether or not France can just roll Austria again right away and just, every year. And next month, Austria is available. They have almost no army. That was one of the flaws of the original game. It's a flaw that's baked into Empires and Arms as well, although I think the buildup for the armies is a little faster in that, in terms of being able to get a force that's of a reasonable size. There are scripting rules in this that seem to prevent it, but there's some contradiction, etc. in them. I also have to contemplate whether or not I'm going to swap boards, pieces, anything. I'm going to keep this going at the very least. I do think the global board is kind of interesting in its own little way. So I may move that over and use that as something else. But for the most part, but I need these too. There's two things that keep me from swapping boards out. One is the naval zones with their additional information. I could write little sticky notes and put them on or something like that, and utilize this. Another is the way rivers are handled on this board. They're hexside rivers, which just makes me happier. The old Avalon Hill, let's run a river, on its natural course and just run it through hexes. And then if you're in the river hex, you're always on the wrong side of the river. That just feels wrong to me. Like there's no way that I can be on the right side of the river for a fight. Like they just become terrible terrain to be in, is essentially what there is. And your defense line, you can create a defense cordon behind the river line, essentially still. But you can't be just across the river. And I don't know how much that's going to disturb me. Part of me says, screw it, break out the old map and play on that, just so that you can test out and compare those two situations. We're in a location, we're in a time where there's no war going on anymore, except between Britain and France. There's very little reason that I can't translate everything over at this moment, which might actually be somewhat to my advantage. The counters are more readable. The map is more readable, less attractive, more readable. I don't know. I don't consider these counters particularly attractive. I've never really been that big a fan of the little cartoony McGowan style art that seems to have gripped the hobby as a whole. It's okay. It's pretty to look at, like minis are, and then once you're in the game, it is maybe at best a non-issue, and at worst, it's somewhat distracting. But these counters are not as well designed as the originals were, and a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, so that's where we're at. I've got to make decisions. I think I'm going to be invading Spain with France, but if I decide that I can just wipe Austria off the map again and again and again, I'll go ahead with that. That gets in problems with the pulsing of this. It becomes really easy to knock Austria out 3 times in that. Under those circumstances. In fact, the only thing precluding it under these rules is that player countries, it seems you can't declare war on. But it's left as sort of this, It's not directly stated that way. It's stated in a way that like leaves you wondering, is that actually what they mean? Anyway, I don't think I'll be playing before probably Saturday night, Sunday morning, somewhere in there, because it is Thursday right now. But who knows? I may make my decision to just keep going with these. I've already had to break into the old game because the counter mix for this is not sufficient because of double-sided counters. They reduced the total size of the counter mix, and in most cases that works fine, but in a few cases there just aren't enough pieces to handle everything that's in the game, broken down as much as it could be. Right, so I did the thing. I'm using the old components for the game at this point, for the most part, which is to say, I want to keep the naval operations the same. I think I'm missing like a counter. I seem to remember there was like a Polish cav I was missing. Maybe I found it. I don't know. There might be a couple of instances where there's pieces missing. In particular, there's other things that are in play here. So like neither side has as many fleets as they do in the campaign that I played. Remember, I was playing with the historical fleets, which the historical option for them, which added a couple of fleets, like per side. And there just aren't the components to cover that. What that means is the Brits, who were already short, had already run through all their fleets, actually ended up losing a ship. The French still have the capability to build more, so they could catch up a little easier. The Spaniards have less fleets significantly. They're like 2 ships less. Not a big deal. They're just not in their force pool now. Not that they're going to get it. The map does have some, first of all, the scale is obviously going to be a little different. It's not hugely different. They're close. Which just shows you how bloated that map is, in a sense, in terms of areas that it covers and whatnot. But my thought was that it was actually the same map. It's not quite. So things are a little bit more condensed. I've got the English down in Florence instead of Naples, even though the French had already basically passed through Florence. I shifted stuff around for that. This is a good time to do it because we're mostly at peace at this point. And I'm gonna give it a shot. It was playing with that huge map for a game that I recognized as being, something that fit on my table, all of it, on one table, was just really irritating me. Something where I could read the counters very easily just by looking at them. Granted, some of them are a little worn out. Definitely have some issues there. And, well, we'll see, We'll see if this reinvigorates me at all. Right now, though, I'm happy that I did it. I still have to clean up a bunch of counters and everything, but that's no great hurry. I'm going to be using the neutral markers from the new game because I don't want to sort them, and there is some value added in some of the counters that are here. I think. I don't know. But yeah, in terms of, I could put little sticky notes. There's an Eastern Mediterranean that I don't really have an easy way to deal with. I could just throw pieces over there. But as an alternative, I can just lift this up and see the information I need to see over there. I'm lacking the circles. So far I haven't used them. I mean, in order to use them, you basically have to decide, okay, I really want to be able to catch this guy, you know, whatever. It probably, you know, who probably should be in one is over here. Nelson should be in one because he's been sitting out at sea for a while. But I just don't think about it. Over here, we're always chasing the French down. Anyway, it is probably still barely Thursday. I'm awfully tired. I'm not gonna move on from here. Almost everybody's neutral, and we're heading our forces back, I guess, to hit Spain. Still haven't made up my mind about whether or not I'm allowed to smack Austria around. Historically, it didn't happen. And it's one of the things I always disliked about the original game, but I'm not absolutely certain that the original game allowed for it. And I'm not certain that this game does either. So I'm like, there's an ambiguity. It's a little bit clearer here because there is an exemption. Well, there is a statement that says you can declare war on non-player countries, which I don't like the implications of that at all. Maybe somehow it's necessary because maybe the two-player game gets unbalanced or something. But if it was unbalanced, in my opinion, it was always unbalanced in favor of the French. So, and I don't see it. It seems like it seems like it's only the only reason that rule is worded the way it is so that you can't just keep beating up Austria and Prussia and forcing them so they can't win the game anymore. And again, Napoleon historically didn't just march into countries for the most part without some excuse, like you aren't following the continental rule anymore or something along those lines. I probably don't have all the ports and whatnot to be able to track. You know, I mean, there's certainly, the ports actually aren't there, but I can make an approximation of them. I mean, this doesn't go further than Dalmatia. We can assume whoever owns Florence owns Naples. So, I mean, I think we can do a guesstimate for those victory conditions and whatnot. The main thing is, this is just going to be so much easier to play on. Well, I woke up, yeah, it's weird seeing this little map instead of that monstrosity. I woke up around 6, went back to sleep after playing a little of my video game, woke up again at like 8:30, and I've been up since then. I've eaten and whatnot. I've got to take another nap to be right for dancing. I've been in the habit of getting up, of taking one of my sleeps, and pretty much a long one the last couple of days, right around dusk, or earlier, actually more like 3 or 4 p.m. actually, and you know, sometimes waking up at dusk, sometimes sleeping through, depending. I'm looking at this map. The two maps are different in significant ways, and I think this one's very distorted in a few ways. At least that's my guess. It's hard to tell because, wow. Oh, they're folded in different places. Yeah, that one's folded on the top. This one's folded on the bottom. I'm like, what the hell? But, you know, I count the hexes. Like, my initial thought was this one's just scaled down, which is going to mean the movement points are going to be more impactful. Now, the game was originally designed with these movement points, and honestly, when you're looking at month-long turns, there's enough time to go a lot further than the units can actually go. Which is kind of why I'm iffy about, like, leaders not being able to just sort of teleport to some extent. And over in the east, I certainly found places where, you know, there's an extra hex over on that map. But then we get to the west, and maybe it's blown up more in the west here. Like I said, it may be distorted. There's like 9 hexes here and only 7 running across the Spanish border. The distance from the Spanish border to Genoa is actually a little longer here. Or maybe the same, I don't know. So, and we can take a look here, like Holland, Amsterdam, which is over here on this. I don't know, we can look at the bottom of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hexes or so. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The border of Holland is definitely longer over there. So I think there's a weird sort of distortion going on in this map where the scales are not the same. And I'm guessing that one's more accurate. That also has the interesting aspect of river crossings, which is something that we don't have in the original. In the original, there is no cost for river. I think there's a cost for leaving the river. Yeah, it's 1 extra movement point to leave the river, i.e. to cross it, essentially. Although you might not actually be crossing it. These across the hex, across the hex rivers are just a horrible idea. I don't know why a game that came out in 1980 persisted with this. I get why some of the earlier games did. And if I don't like this that much, the next peace period, maybe I swap back to the old map. But I think being able to play on this tiny map is just going to be so much more effective for me. And I don't really feel like the terrain differences, and they're significant, you know. We got high mountains here and low mountains. There's a lot of stuff that is additional in the new map, but it's not worth that size. It just isn't. Okay, that should put us on the neutrals phase. And who the hell is neutral? All of these. So I got, I mean, there's not going to be any attrition for them. You know, it's funny, France is essentially not at war with anyone except England. But they still have to suffer attrition. But they can split their forces up, and, you know, to some extent. So let's take a look at, okay, we got good production for everyone but Austria. I wanted to look at the Landwehr rules, because again, they don't stick in my head very well. The Austrians, it's a specific date, basically. But what's interesting is that the nation has to be anti-French. You have to be in war with France to get your Landwehr for the first time. That's new. And I don't know. I'm trying to remember. I seem to think that the Landwehr were raised up in a prelude to the war. At least for the Prussians. But whatever. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure that they don't have them yet. Well, I forgot to check weather. It is April. That's going to be fair everywhere except in the north, in Russia. And that's a big deal because I was just doing my Russian movement, which will be wet. So that's fine. Do I really only have three zones? It's weird because there's 4 maps and 3 zones. And they're best expressed over there. I'll try to cope with them as much as I can, but basically map 4 is going to mostly be the northeast stuff, but the Swedes are going to be included in it. And Spain and most of Italy is going to be map 3. You know, like this is mountain here. It's not over there. There's a little slice going through, but there's also a slice going through that gets you closer to Turin. Turin's in the mountains there, and only 2 hexes from the sea. I mean, there are significant differences between the 2 maps. The mere effort of moving the pieces is much, much less. I don't even think I need to be rotating counters or such the way I did in the original game. Of course, I don't actually have to be in supply either. But I'm like looking at this and seeing what I'm going to have to do and whatever. It's so compact. Like the actual hexes are smaller. I know one of the gripes was the hexes were too small in the new version. The small hexes are what make this thing playable. I'm not sure what the Danish and Swedish rules are supposed to be. I started doing the naval phase and realized, wait a minute, I'm supposed to do the alliance. We actually have some stuff now because of the surrender. During the alliance phase, the pro-French-Russian segment, pro-French player segment, the Austria and Prussia have been conquered one time. They can attempt to change Denmark by rolling the die as part of the alliance phase. The alliance die roll modifiers are used. If the result is 0 or less, the political status is shifted to pro-French. Denmark, right, where, oh, I don't have them over here. So I actually have to work over here. We're essentially at a +1 because whatever city points we may have gotten on Prussia, and we had at least 1, are gone. In addition, wait, the Western miners are pro-French. I do not have that marked. Okay, so I'm actually at -2. I have not gotten Italy because I lost Naples. I got Dalmatia, but I lost Naples. I haven't gotten everything in Germany. Now, some of these in Germany you can't get, like Hanover. The French don't have troops for Hanover. They can't get it. Hesse. Did I get Hesse? Yeah, I got Hesse. I didn't get Brunswick. But again, Hesse doesn't have, you know, it's under me. Westphalia covers the Hesse-Brunswick-Hanover combination. And the Baltic states, obviously, if I'm rolling for Denmark, I don't have it. So at -2, we check to see if the Danes end up coming over. And they do. And this is big because they get to play in the naval phase. This is why the English would want to invade Denmark. And I would have done it if I wasn't at war. And you know what? I can put these at war all the way over with the US, making it less likely that I will bump them into the pool. Okay, so that's that. And now The other side of this is the Swedes. Sweden begins as a neutral minor. Sweden's political during the alliance phase in the pro-French player segment. If both Austria and Prussia have been conquered, the pro-French player can attempt to change the political status of Sweden by rolling the die. This is optional. Normally, you're allowed one roll against the major powers. I feel like that should apply here. It's not written as though it does. I'm going to play it as though it is. Basically, I'm not sure that I really want to roll for Sweden this early anyway, because I want Russia to be tied up with them. So, I think I attempted to break out here, failed, but I got the Danish Navy. Now, the Danish Navy is a lot smaller in this countermix. They have 3 ships over there. They're a powerful navy in the original, in the new game. In the original, they have a single ship. I'm going with the original game's navies for various reasons, because I don't want to be tinkering around, with mixed counters. I think I may have a counter somewhere that I had to replace. Actually, no. What happened was there's like only one Russian Guard cavalry in the game, or one French Guard cavalry, or something like that. And there's too many counters for it in the new version. I actually didn't check the setup in the new version. Maybe there's more over there, but I think the chart didn't allow for more. I don't know. But I put 2 in instead of 1 for some reason. I don't know. Anyway, part of the issue is anything that there's only one of, a 2-point counter, is present because everything's back printed. Okay. So let me, let's just do this. I don't think I want to transport Danes anywhere. I could transport a couple of strength points over, well, not with a leader. But I can sail out here, and that means the Brits get interception attempts. I don't want to do it with this, but I have a couple of fleets here. One of them, unfortunately, is doing something valuable. And I think that one caught. And I think the other one did not. So now we'll fight out the naval combat, and I can just roll. I don't have it memorized. Oh, that's going to be ugly. That's a 1-to-1. We rolled a 6, goes to 7. We capture the Danish ship. Now, if I have more British ships, we just got one. I do not, nor do I have it here. What are these? Oh, these are the units I can't build. I just flipped them over. Yeah, we captured, so we destroyed it, and that puts us to the attrition roll. As per normal. Oh, I haven't done, never mind. I haven't done that shit. Figure out how to play with the the 2 boards and play at the same time is painful. If this thing were a little bit smaller, I wouldn't mind. It doesn't have to be this tiny, right? This is a tiny, tiny map. If this went with the same axis that the original went with, and got rid of, off-boarded, whatever, all these excess things, the naval movement, the Egyptian, all those tracks and everything, I would be pretty happy with it. But it eats up an amount of space that for a game that you have to pay attention to all over the place is painful. Now, to be fair, the big World War II games do that now too. And good old Third Reich didn't used to. It used to have a map kind of like this. And I actually went and picked up my a new 3rd edition copy of Third Reich for the simple fact, I know there was a 4th edition or whatever, but 3rd is what I had. And I would have been fine picking up 4th, but this was cheap. that tiny map, even though I love the maps, especially for Advanced Third Reich and Rising Sun, that tiny map was just such an advantage that I'm like, sometimes maybe I want to play Third Reich and I want to play it, I just want to play basic Third Reich. I don't want all that extra stuff. And more importantly, I was actually thinking about, is there any way I could play the full game on the tiny, maybe less accurate map? That's a lot less pretty. I loved when when A3R's map came out, I was like, oh, this is fucking beautiful. But it takes up so much damn space. There is something to be said about a game that doesn't have a huge footprint. And, again, there are almost as many hexes on this board as there are on that board. So they could have shrunk it down. The counters are also different size. So you can see these guys are a little bit bigger, just a tiny bit, than these guys. Just like the hexes are a tiny bit bigger. These counters are also thin. I normally gripe when counters are too thin. I gotta say, I'm in favor of this width of counter. The new ones, and this is standard for the hobby, are thick. They don't stack well. Here, I got really easy stacking with these things. Now, of course, there is a problem. These fucking things, the backs come off, some of them. The backs were all white paper. It's not a big deal because they're not double-sided, but I don't think the front came off any of them. But yeah, these counters, my SPI counters from the same era, were thinner material than, and you can, let's not look at one that doesn't have the back, but the backing doesn't make much difference. You can kind of see it right like that. And again, that makes stacking harder with the newer games. If you're not going to have huge stacks, that's fine. But the modern, emphasis on component quality and whatnot, and GMT used to be pretty good. They had little thin counters too. And I remember kind of being kind of grumpy, when I feel the thin counters. But I'm beginning to really, really lean towards those in any game where you have a stack of stuff. It's not that bad in Great Battles of History because you don't have big stacks of information on a counter or whatever. So that was one of the systems where I dealt with little thin counters and thick counters. But yeah, there's just something about those old crappy components that I feel. Now, I'm not thrilled with when counters are too thin, okay? These guys are at a good thickness. They're not super thick. Avalon Hill had a tendency to put out some really thick counters for some games. But I don't think they ever made anything thinner than these guys. And there were so many counters, that's why they went with a thinner stock, I think. But and this is about equivalent to the SPI stock that I was used to. It really can't stand when it's just card stock cut. That's horrible. I can still get this stuff in my fingers, I can still comprehend how many counters I have and deal with them. So there's a certain amount of thickness you need, just like there's a certain size board you need. You wouldn't want this whole thing reduced to this size with tiny, tiny little hexes or something. You just wouldn't want that. But maybe it's what I'm used to or whatever, but it sure is an upgrade from that thing in so many ways, except for the rivers. But yeah, I mean, I think if they had shrunk the hex size and the counter size, and reoriented the map to fit this kind of orientation, maybe with a tiny bit of distortion, maybe not. Cut off some things they didn't need, like Naples and Northern England, and get rid of all the crap that doesn't have to be that's not really the main board. I would be fine if this thing was like, a piece of cardstock to play the one scenario that you need for. The Global Naval, fine if that's a piece of cardstock. Those tracks. Look, those tracks are over here in this, along with the charts and tables you needed to play the game. You need a lot more charts and tables now, but most of them are actually on here. The force march, the attrition, I think those are the same. The combat table, I bet you I can get away with that one. I bet it's exactly the same as this. One thing that changed was the naval table. It's up here. I think that's different. Oh, it was the same setup. I think it's different. 1-to-1, maybe not. Okay, the results are different. Okay, this has, you take the result listed, so I would need this, I think. They didn't have a damaged result, and that's the whole thing. This has the naval damage table, which I think is a nice addition. So I can't use the old naval table, but I think all the other tables I can, which is really, really intriguing. Like, they managed to get everything you need to play, other than the Grand Campaign naval rules, on there, while, on one sheet, one side of one sheet, whereas I've got this cumbersome thing. Now, it does have the terrain effects chart. That was on the back of the rule book. This is more helpful. But yeah. And again, that makes life easier if I'm playing on just that. And I don't have to worry about unfolding this thing and getting it in my way all the time. That was an annoyance as well. I had to carry it around with me. And well, now I have everything I need, right on one table. That's a smaller footprint than an 18XX game. One piece. I got a Polish cav. Apparently I must have lost a Polish cav. I've only got 2 of them over here. 3 are in the force pool. I'm sure I lost more than just one counter, but, that one is either definitely missing or there weren't enough to begin with, such as, I think there probably were enough to begin with. This is a game that I had since I was in high school or whatever. Anyhow, I got a worse attrition roll this time. I got a big old 6. But without winter in place, I think the French are okay. As long as they don't break the 6 unit, and most of the forces are not going to. That's another thing. Guess what? These are done logically. Okay. The general rule, number first, then alphabetical. No fucking Marat under leader B, on the chart. No people all over the place. And also, it's only the leaders that are in the Grand Campaign, which is great, because if you're playing one of those little scenarios, yeah, I can see why you want a leader box set for them. But let me just show you something. Here's the French Allies leader display. What's on the back? Nothing. Absolutely useless there. No reason that couldn't be printed. They used ink on it. They're all that way. They're all blank on the back. Could have also used some other nation in place of putting Piedmontese units in play. Turks, I don't know, because at least the Mamluks have a slightly different thing. But a lot of decisions could have been made to reduce the cost in terms of total counters or whatever of the game. And of course, the biggest one, make the counters smaller and thinner and the map smaller. You know, look, I understand, you know, I understand. One of the selling points of this, of the OSS one, was, oh, look at the beautiful map and the beautiful counters and all in modern style. Yeah, fuck modern style. I'm tired of it. I'm beginning to realize something. You know, I'm not dreading playing now. I come up here and I'm like, I don't have to walk all over the place. I don't have to squint to see the counters. Yeah, I have to squint to see the names. Okay. But like I can identify which nation anything's from pretty easily. My eyes are troubled, but they can handle these. They can't handle those. But the biggest is just the footprint that the game took up. And, you know, the stacks were harder to manage. These counters all stack perfectly fine because you don't use the reverse side, so they're all in the same direction. That's something people don't usually think about. I'm in favor of double-sided counters, don't get me wrong. But when you've got some flipped one way and some flipped the other, it can make stacks less stable. At the end of the day, I'm deciding France can't just pound on Austria, but they wouldn't be able to do it in a two-player game either. It's ahistorical. It's what the scripting, I think, is intended to prevent, but there's like a special case that seems to allow it in, you know, against non-player countries. I think as long as Austria is compliant with their peace conditions, France is good with them. Could they declare war for some other reason? I don't know. I mean, again, this isn't a game like Empires and Arms where there's much more that I could gain out of a war with them. And that's the whole issue. The only thing that I would want from them is to keep beating their army up. That doesn't sound viable to me. Like, that doesn't sound like a reasonable reason to be able to. So the only problem I have is with that, you can force a player out of the pro-French faction and then attack them the next turn. I don't know. Whatever, Austria isn't really able to build up a reasonable army, and they don't want to fight on their own. They'd be fighting without Russia and without Prussia. So, yeah. That's going to put me on... here we go. Do we have the sequence play? We do. We have the non-French player sequence. We can just put it over here. That's going to put me on the British side. I am going to break, although I'm fine. We started a siege here of Florence. Again, Naples isn't covered in it. I'm going to let the French basically... I mean, the Brits wouldn't have been able to do much to prevent this. And in fact, the problem is they're going to have a couple of units captured, which they will never get back because, well, short of defeating Napoleon and sending him into exile, because France and Britain are never at peace in this game. I still haven't made up my mind about whether or not I can attack Austria. But I feel like maybe I can get my checkbox on defeating Spain. And because I should have plenty of time. And keep some sort of garrison here in Europe. I'm going to plug this in. I'm probably going to come back and run a little cut to put over on the Old War and Peace just to extol its virtues and why I'm preferring it over this. It'll just be a repeat of what I said. It's going to go up before this does, though, so there you have it. Jump back in time a little bit because with the global naval movement all the way over there, I forgot about it, even though I was talking about it. Got tied up in other things and playing on the board itself. I got to do the French movement on there. I did their navies over here. But once that was resolved, and I know that like the Danish Navy is gone and everything, I got to try to find a place for me to hunt. And then I go to the Brit naval phase, which is pretty much all the Brits are going to be doing now. And the French managed to get a success, driving the British numbers above 20% again. But although the Brits were unable to catch the French ship, they did some actions against bases and got 2 successes. Remember, they're throwing 3 production in. And this, oh, I think I counted this way before, so whatever. I mean, it's a 1-point difference either way, but I think I fucked up forgetting how that chart is. English get their attrition check. We're in good weather for them. I don't think a 5 is going to do anything. Mine in Naples. I've got this siege underway. 2, 4, 5. +1. I'm going to lose 1. I'm going to take a British unit as a loss because I'm trying to avoid having my British units captured. Which is going to happen otherwise. Again, it doesn't really make sense. Guys who are dying of starvation there, or dying in the field or whatever, you can make an argument that guys who are dying in the field become some cadres or something. But guys who are dying of starvation probably are not. They're either going to be captured or not. They go back in the force pool, but when I capture the city, they go in the prisoner pool, which are not the same trained guys. They end up in the force pool. Somehow I'm reducing the manpower available to England as a whole by capturing troops. Now, it makes sense that capturing troops means more than killing them, but honestly, I don't really buy that the guys who are starving here, who are too starving to be functional soldiers, don't end up in the captured pool somehow, right? Like, if I do capture it, which I should. Anyway, British production, there is none. I don't get to roll a die or anything. If I have points left, I can rebuild this fleet, but otherwise I'm in trouble, honestly, and may want to reposition ships. I have English production points left. I'm going to spend, those are regular land points, but I'm going to spend 1 to recuperate my fleet. I had to spend 3 because of the high commerce rating. I get rid of this ship, or it gets unlucky, you know, in its rating, and I'll be back to having my money. But right now I've got to spend it all on the global Navy, as well as having 3 ships out there. I actually have 4, but yeah, I don't think there are any others. So that's going to be end of turn. Let's put the Russian dice up there. I mean, 3 countries are in enforced neutrality right now. Although Austria, again, I think I can ream out Austria if I really want to, and force them out for another year. I don't know. I'm so torn as to which way I should interpret this. Not caring so much about the rules, but caring about which one matters, you know, which one reflects things better. Because France obviously would knock out those troops if they can. Of course, Austria can just run away and, you know, let Vienna and Budapest fall. But no matter what, that extends the peace for another year. Is that peace likely to be extended for another year anyway? Yeah, unless I mean, if the troops get wiped out, it might be extended longer. You know, that's the whole thing. If I have a chance to wipe out the troops. Plus, the unfair thing is I get another mark on there. But, like, this isn't what France was about. They weren't about, let's destroy the Austrian army again. And that happens in Empires in Arms, and it happened under my old interpretation of the rules of this game. Not really sure, because both sets of rules are pretty fucking fuzzy about what I can do and what I can't. I mean, by strict reading, I feel like the only way that I can attack somebody is if they were pro-French. I don't know. And it's that kind of strict reading that gets me to the, yeah, maybe I can't attack the Austrians at all. This kind of behavior, the just keep hitting each nation, forcing it into another war, that is precisely, that is worse in Empires in Arms than it is in this. Because in Empires in Arms, you get basically glory points for winning battles and winning wars. So, as Napoleon, especially if you put a bid in, a big bid in for the French, and I've seen, you know, you basically want to get your score up, just keep hitting people again and again and again. Just keep winning the wars. There is a cost to declaring war, but the cost to declaring war is less than the advantage of winning a war. Same thing in EU, but in EU, it doesn't feel like it's as big a deal. I don't know why. Mainly because there are things you want to go to war with, like there are features in the game. There are other things you want to do to pad your score. Constant violence is not necessarily the best move. And it's easy to excuse, okay, I want to do this. Like, I have goals here that are big points. Maybe I could get more off of fighting battles. It also doesn't have the glory system. But it does have points for winning wars. Maybe I can get more out of winning wars, but the game is like obviously telling me to do this other thing instead. In Empires in Arms, the constant bouncing Austria, then Prussia, Austria, then Prussia, Austria, then Prussia, maybe hit Russia, but if you can avoid it, you don't want to, is just going to give France a tremendous racking up of their score. I never count that into my victory conditions. I always look at it as, look, as France, what should I want to do? What I want to do is I want to be as peaceful as I can. I know I'm going to get points off wars, but I want to be as peaceful as I can and try to push, you know, my hegemony, but not really just try to rack up the glory points. I feel like the victory conditions are kind of flawed in it, and just like they were in this, and are in this. Whereas, so I ended up, you know, with a lower bid than somebody who had that kind of decisive thing. My bid was, I'll bid a little bit more than I will on Russia, like 1 point or 2 points more than I will on Russia. And Russia has a relatively easy way of making tons and tons of, like, Russia has a very easy way of winning the game. They don't have to do much. They can just sit there and win. France can almost do that in the same sort of way. And if you add the glory, and it looks, you know, what I consider the eventual glory that's going to come no matter what, as you start making demands and whatnot. France is going to, you know, probably do as well as Russia. They'll probably win together. In fact, my worry with Empires in Arms is that everybody ends up winning. An attempt at napping did not work. Since I missed last week dancing, I really can't miss another week. So, you know, it's one thing when it's banned and whatnot, like during the pandemic. Weather. And then all these neutrals. And I still... 1807, this is that. Okay. There we go. What month are we in? May? For the May day is the great day. That's fine across the board. And nothing too exciting. I guess I could move the Russian Navy if I really want. But the rest of it is really just the production die rolls. So we'll get those out. Austria gets a double. And the Russians are slowly working their way back into Russia. Almost all of them there. Just Bagration taking his time. That brings us to the French. For diplomacy, I have the Swedes to play with. Now again, I have a -2. Let's look at the Sweden roll. If I get a success, I can cause the withdrawal from Swedish Pomerania. And I do. They must be evacuated as soon as possible. Okay. I'm going to have to put some kind of marker to remind me of that. Because I'm not going to remember that that's the case. So I'm going to put this here. The Swedes are going to have to use their navy and physically pull them out. It would make more sense if they just teleported, but whatever. And now to the French navies. The French managed to sneak a battleship into Marseille, and the English didn't notice it. Oops. In the East Mediterranean, I can't see the circle for the West Mediterranean, but yeah, I went to the East Mediterranean, getting further away, whatever, and also shifting over there into the, I don't know what that's called. Should be the China Sea, but it's East Asia. Okay. We should rename the China Sea something else. We can name the Gulf of Mexico something else. Why not? And this should be the American Ocean. God. Okay, so we managed to get the English up to 25 with the rating, which is quite high. 30 is the next big one, which is I'd have to send troops. I can't send troops. That's a problem. I don't know what would happen if I can't do something. I don't have any transports. I'm not allowed to send troops out there. Maybe commit another 3 ships. I don't know, but yeah. Anyway, it's not the English right now, but I got to remember to actually utilize them and not just let the French slip away. Oops. It is the French turn, and we have an attrition check, which is potentially painful if I have any big stocks, and it's bad for the Spaniards. All right, I'm going to ignore this. The Spanish also slipped a ship in. Now, those are only half as effective, but you get in the right area and you can still do some damage. Continuing their long walk towards Spain, keeping some forces over here, sending some Danes over even, keeping some forces in Central Europe, because Austria is free now. If everything was open, they could conceivably shoot up some stuff. Something of interest, we took Naples, and the Neapolitans ended up staying aligned. So now there are some of them sitting in Austria in my favor. The ones I actually captured are not. I have to rebuild them because They went to the prisoner pool, which puts them to the force pool, etc. But I did capture 3 English infantry. This is problematic, and it's why you don't do that kind of adventurism with the English. Speaking of which, let me just do them right away too, because I feel like I really ought to be... I mean, it's really all the English are doing right now. I'm not at that 30%, so I'm not at the point where it's like, oh, not only do I have no money and I have to commit 3 ships, but I got to commit 2 troops that I don't have. What's up with that? The only thing really happening is the naval phase for the English. They tried to hunt things down, no success. They did get a marker there. They're over here. Nelson's hunting things down. I blockaded all the warships. That leaves some transports open. It's a risk too. You know, I got 2 transports available. That could cause issues, but it's okay. It's okay, I tell myself. But yeah, I got to get this down below 20% so I can start building fleets again. Because I'm not allowed to build anything as things stand. My die rolls can't be improved, which is problematic, and I have to spend 3 of my funds, which is everything I make, on the global. Now I do have some cash in hand, but I don't have any additional ships to build. Which feels like there aren't enough English ships, because there are still French ships available, but all that's left for the English are transports. They've got all their ships out there. I've got everything covered. Oh, I know what it is. I've got 4 ships hunting 1 down there. That's the real problem. But I really got to get that guy. Yes, I could send 1 of those ships home. I only need to have 3 of them out there. But yeah. Anyway, that's going to put us to the end of the turn. Put a die from everybody, I guess. I don't know. That puts us into June. Again, this is one of those periods, and they happen here, they happen in Empires in Arms. I don't know how much, I don't remember them happening as badly in other games I've played, where everything's just kind of quiet, and there's nothing really going on. The French are repositioning their army for the invasion of Spain. Not necessary in a lot of games. So yeah, I don't know. In some ways, they're the part of the game that I like most. The turns are easy, and I'm passing time, you know, on the track, etc. It's necessary that it happens, so it's not like, oh, well, that sucked. You know, I like downtime. I like downtime of any kind. So like where I don't have to worry about all the geometry of these attacks. I was reading some of the comments on BGG about the OSS version. It seems like people who got the version I got are pretty miserable with the rolls, and that they may have cleaned them up quite a bit after it. This, I guess, was the 6th edition. I don't know. And apparently in the 7th edition, the second Kickstarter or whatever. Phew, what the fuck? And there is a repair kit or something for it. But you got to buy it, you know. It's not like, oh, we fucked up and put out a shit game, which is the honest truth in a lot of ways. You know, it's just like, I never took them at their word that it was 6th edition. It's like all these print and plays and whatever. That's just bullshit. You know, you're not putting your money up there. When you're putting money up to produce something and putting your company's name on it and everything, not just your personal reputation, you know, where you're like, well, it's okay, it's just a print and play, you know, you can print another one, right? When you're putting your own, ooh, you know what I forgot? I forgot the war with America. That's part of the problem, but that's not over. When when you're really putting your company's reputation on the line, and I will never buy another game from OSS. Like, it's just not going to happen. I had heard decent things about them, but they could have at least responded to my email, and they have not bothered. It's been, I don't know, a couple of weeks. They say they're busy, but yeah. At the very least, they should say something. They should be letting me know. Look, we can't send you a new rule book. We would have been able to maybe within a few months of when you got the game, but but here's where the PDF is. That would have been a reasonable response, and also, hey, there's an upgrade kit that you could buy, and that would come with the new rule book that you're asking for. Just no response at all. And one of the things I noted in the comments was that their customer service is absolute shit. So I mean, no real example of why, but if they don't even respond to email, yeah, that's pretty much the case. And you compare that, to here's the problem. For me, the high water marks were the gamers back in the 90s. Anything went wrong, they would fix it. Once they went under MMP, I feel like the quality of their support went downhill. When it was Dean doing it, it was really excellent. And then GMT, but not recently. I feel like GMT has abandoned their old principles. They're no longer sending you a free replacement. So here's an example. Banish All Their Fears. They did nothing to fix that rule book. Nothing at all. And that thing's a mess. Maybe they've decided they can't afford to do the things they were doing before, which was like, okay, if you got a shit rule book, you would get a replacement for it or whatever. But it's like, I kind of got used to that. And at the prices that the games go for now, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to judge. It really is hard to judge because, I mean, minimum wage isn't that much higher. It's about twice what it was when I was a kid, So to me, the games should be not much more than 2 times. Well, they were like $5, maybe $10, and now they're like going up on $80 and whatnot. So that's how I judge things. Compare minimum wage to what the price of something is, and if the price hasn't matched minimum wage, I look at it as it has bloated in price. And food had held pretty reasonable for a while. I don't know what else. Certainly not rent. Anyway, I'm just. It is kind of late Sunday morning. It's kind of funny. When I got there for dancing, obviously something weird was going on. There was some kind of event outside. A vendor or something was present. We haven't had a lot of these, and nothing this big. There have been other events, but not a vendor type thing. There were, oddly, it was an alcoholic drink that they were selling, but oddly there were a lot of underage people there to begin with. Now they get kicked out, but I don't know, they seemed associated with this thing. I guess maybe, a little underage and have friends who are involved in this or something. I don't know. But it was really, really odd. Anyway, the beginning of the night was really, really quiet. But then, and this always happens, it picks up as the night goes on, but it was actually more quiet than any other. And I was kind of impressed that like this event wasn't doing anything. It became the most packed that I've ever seen. And it was, it really kind of interfered. I couldn't dance inside. There wasn't a lot of room to dance outside even. So I ended up hanging out and chatting with people a fair amount instead. And I think I drank about the same amount. But what's different is I remember everything. Like, it's not just the alcohol that's like blotting things out. It's the physical motion and all that, and the lights, and I don't know. Anyway, here we are in what, June? June, which is going to be fair everywhere no matter what. I suppose I should fix this just because. And I guess I roll production for my neutrals. Since I'm on camera, I might as well do it. And we all get normal. How about that? I'm looking around, I noticed this little flag here. That reminds me, hey, the Swedes are supposed to pull their troops out of Pomerania. The Commerce War ended up in a couple of Spanish and French ships getting engaged, mutually damaged. This is problematic for the Brits. They don't have any production anymore, basically. Meanwhile, in terms of production for the French, the Spanish get a bonus production point. I've got to be careful. I've got to push Spain out of the alliance the turn before I want to attack them. But right now, I don't have the forces near the border, close enough to be contemplating that. I also have to be careful because I'm not going to put the scripting element that I think applies to the two-player game very well of when Austria wants to re-enter the war. They've got the 1-year timer, but they can declare war before they get their whole force pool out. To me, that's sort of a situation of, yeah, they shouldn't be restricted to that. It's not. Basically, the question is, do you want to play the alliance rules as if all they do is replace the alliance die roll? That's kind of what it feels like the rules are meant to be read as, which means Austria can't even enter a war until it gets its whole force pool out. Well, there could be an incredibly advantageous time. Let's say Russia and Prussia are able to enter the war, and Austria is not because of that stupid limitation, but it has most of its force pool out, and that overwhelming force would be helpful. I feel like they should be able to make those decisions. Of course, they wouldn't be able to make the decisions at all based on, in the two-player game, based on the political ramifications, but I think the scripting actually handles some of that, like Austria does automatically declare war once their force pool is out. Again, I don't want to put that kind of burden. Like, these are the decisions that the individual players should have. And there should be some diplomacy in it. It shouldn't all be forced into these mechanisms that are meant to make the two-player game work, but just aren't worded in a way that handles both. And again, maybe this shit got fixed in the 7th edition or whatever, but you'd think it would have played out and people would have made some comments along these lines. But I have absolutely, when you've got basically one guy doing all the revision work and being the developer for it, I have little or no confidence You know, it would have made more sense to me to have brought McLaughlin in as developer instead, so that he had, you know, this sort of overarching, look, that's not what this game was about type of view. I'm sure he okayed it all, you know, at some level or another, but I think a more, it just feels to me like he didn't have as active a role in it. Maybe he did, who knows, but it reminds me of what kind of my worry with Civil War will be when that gets reissued. I don't know who's putting it out. I hope it's not this company. Because they'll probably make changes and make the game worse if it is. Shift towards Spain underway. In addition, I'm utilizing, like Poniatowski left Poland. He's taking command of these Neapolitans and French garrison that's back here. I don't need all of these. They might be useful, but they're dangerous where they are. You know, they could easily get killed. I wanted to point out I had Napoleon in Paris. I didn't realize that when I made the roll, but I'm pretty sure the roll was not a 4, which would have been, I think it was much lower than that, which would have been the, hey, I get the extra production. And I guess we'll go on to the English, which is really just the naval thing. And I'm in danger of hitting that point where I don't know what I can do about it within the rules. If I don't have the transports to move the guys, I just guess I can't, and I don't think I'll suffer any additional problems. Like I won't have to send 6 ships instead of 3 or something. I was able to hunt down the ships in the Med and knock them out. That takes one problem out of the way. We're also making things really unhappy in the global area in terms of, you know, Cape of Good Hope has a -4 on it. South Atlantic has a -3. We're trying to make it really, really rough on the French. The French commerce, the problem with the commerce rating is once you start it, you're kind of committed to it. You could give up and then you lose all your benefits very quickly. But we're still in that 20% range, which means we're really, really hurting the English. And to the extent that, like, I built a new fleet, well, Nelson went and blockaded that fleet, but he doesn't have a lot available to him. And he doesn't have, I think, the points to repair the ships that he's slated for repair. Not sure, there might be... Yeah, there's still a couple of production points left, which I'm saving to use for that, right? Because if I lose this sort of economic warfare portion, that could be it for England, you know? That could be the game, essentially. Sweden didn't have any impact yet. Oh, the English, yes, I checked for the American War. That didn't end. Came close. I think that 10 is from that, actually. And, you know, now Spain is going to start its timer, which, I don't know. There's just so much going on that's painful. But I'm definitely having a better time playing on this map. It's much, much easier to make my way up here. I'm not feeling that sense of dread. You're trying to contemplate how I'm going to wrap up my fingers so I don't bang it constantly, because the amount of pressure I have to put. See, the problem is, I think I need flexibility in my finger, right? So I can't just, you know, put like a metal ring around it or something. I don't know if I have one. I can certainly run a bunch of tape around it. I don't know how much that's going to interfere, because it's right on the knuckle, obviously. You know, that's what always bangs. Anyway, back up here. Naval operations went a little bit more poorly for the anti-French. Another Spanish ship got captured, but sunk, basically. French fleet actually managed to get out of the Atlantic, into the Atlantic because of that, but got beaten back by a bigger bigger English fleet. We are free in the Med again, but we didn't get as good a total rating. We only caused 2 hits on shipping, which means the English are going to gain some ground at least. Anyway, a bad attrition roll, that is actually going to hurt, I think. I think there are some French forces that are large. And yeah, a couple of strength points, 1 French, 1 Neapolitan. I want to get the garrison back. Production, nothing good, even with Nappy. All right, so special cases, the French do not want to trigger any further pro-Swedish operations. They want to hold off until Russia's coming close to entering the game. There is some danger to it, because right now I've got a -2 on the die roll. I could pretty much guarantee it's going to happen. Why do I have -2? Portugal and Holland is one of them. Spain and France. Okay. Once I go to war with Spain, that changes it to equal. However, speaking of Spain, I'm still not ready to go in, but we have to look at the Spanish special rules, whatever they are. Now, I don't know where the fuck they are. They would be here. Spanish and Portuguese production. Pretty sure this isn't missing, but I don't see it. Pretty sure this was in here. There we go. Right at the top of the page. You know, it's not very dominant though. Okay. Spain starts at the 12. It can move down. All right. So the chart is in effect at this point. Actually, it was last turn, but we didn't roll. What did I do with... Oh, fuck. The chart's like partially not there. I can use the production track for this. Is this it? No, it's up there. Okay. So I'm going to need the rules near where I move things, because we've got some hits on us. Starts at 12. Move down for each squadron in the force pool. That's going to include this one. So that is 3. There are no pro-French forces in Spain. This is weird. Move up twice if anti-French force... Oh, no. Okay. Move down twice if pro-French has moved any Spanish units. We're not going to do that anymore. This is basically Spain getting pissed at the anti-Portugal operations. But as you saw, Portugal fell so easily in 1805. There's... Okay. I don't think anything too exciting is going to happen. It's going to be based on the navies, but it goes every turn, right? Move down one Spanish. I don't see a turn thing. It's not a timer. Oh, once per month. Yeah, okay. It came eligible this turn, so this will be the first turn that it moves down. Yeah, the English are going to be able to... I mean, eventually it is going to convert, but the navies becomes an iffy thing. You know, as I build navies, it goes up. As I lose them, it goes down. But for the most part, that's the only thing affecting it. France is going to declare war before that happens. Where am I? I did the attrition. I did the production. I think I'm on the French movement. I get screwed up. This doesn't have the full sequence that's over there. I end up putting, well, actually this does. It has a short form of it, but alliance comes after attrition, but before reinforcement. It's all just so hard to remember the ordering in this one for some reason. I don't know. There's like something a little weird about it. I think it's that I don't know. I don't know what it is. I expect the alliance to happen before the naval so that you can like do a surprise move with your navies, but you really can't in this game. And I think it was designed so that you can't. Where am I? Where am I? I'm ready to do the problem is I have to pee. I'm ready to do the French movement, which is again going to be shifting towards Spain. And that gets us to August, where we have I don't know. We didn't have much happen for the English. Their naval phase, the big thing, they ended up blockading Copenhagen, where another ship popped up. Didn't get anything on there, but we did manage to reduce the Lloyd's index by a little bit this turn. Back up here. Yesterday was kind of interesting. It got like right around 70 degrees, which is unseasonably warm. Today it's around 60. Got my windows open and stuff, just to, you know, get a little bit of air going through. But it's a little chilly feeling to me. It's always colder up here than it reports. Not up in the loft particularly, but up on my hill. But anyway, when it hits 60, I'm like, on my computer, I'm like, oh, I should get a thermostat that I can read. Anyhow, I got some work done on my wheel, made some distance on it, and I wrapped cloth around my knuckle, and that seemed to have at least reminded me. So weather's automatically good, and all of our neutrals are crapping out on production. Got 4 points against the Brits, which means they're going to gain a little bit this turn. Again, not enough to make a difference. Things are, you know, in a certain static position. But they lost a ship over here. They got somebody back in the Mediterranean slipped out. Guy who was here, whatever. The English are definitely having trouble. They didn't have everything blockaded, it turned out. Sometimes hard to see. This is a damaged French ship that's sitting around in Roquefort. I left it there to fix. But last turn I ended up spending all my production to get another ship out. Well, that may not be as wise as doing the repair work. Of course, that couldn't be repaired yet. It didn't have a yellow thing on it. That's going to put me on the attrition roll. Actually, the ordering's interesting. The attrition comes before the alliance. So I can make a choice as to whether or not I'm going to push Spain out yet. The majority of my forces still aren't very close, so I don't think I want to. I want to keep being able to utilize, there's only really one Spanish ship left, but to utilize the Spaniards as much as I possibly can. Nasty, nasty attrition. That is likely to hurt. Again, it's not going to hurt the most of the forces, but there was at least one force that was over the 5. Napoleon gives us the bonus this time, so we're going to get double production. Managed to sink another French ship. No, out in the North Atlantic, and another action against bases. You know, it's starting to get harder and harder to do the commerce rating. We're still above 20 though, so that's ugly. This is there, and we're moving into September. It's not good to start the campaign in the winter, but I feel like Napoleon's under some real pressure here with like the danger of a coalition forming again that can beat us. We don't have enough of a delay on the Prussians, It's just ugly. And again, Russia, Tilsit runs out. You don't know what it means that it runs out particularly. I think that's just the war. Neutral, yeah. Now, again, if we were playing the non-multiplayer game, nobody would be brought in. Well, if we were playing the original game with the non-multiplayer, without the scripting that, brings Austria into the war when their force pool is full and all kind of stuff like that. The alliance die rolls for the two-player game prevent another coalition from happening. Basically, the French are going to, even once they invade Spain, be breaking even in terms of where their alliance situation is. So that means that neither side is going to be able to move any of the alliances. Spain is not very likely to convert to gain any city points on the French. And even if I bring Napoleon down there, they're probably not going to win a battle against him and thereby convert the, get a victory point against him. So there's nothing that's going to really allow anybody to do anything in terms of bringing the countries into war. The scripting does allow for that, and that's a big deal. Like, the scripting gets you closer to what I think the multiplayer rules would get you to, which is that, look, Austria, Prussia, Russia, they're going to all wait and declare war at the same time, basically. Austria does not want to face what's here even with what they have. Now, whether or not France could attack Austria, I feel like it's unreasonable for France to keep beating up countries, but the original rules seem to maybe allow that. It's hard to tell. These seem to not allow it unless they became pro-French. I don't even understand how you... And again, maybe that's corrected in the later rules. Like, the living rules that I have available are, I think, for this edition. Or the online, the PDF rules that I have. I don't know if, like, the later edition improves on those in any sense. No idea. I know they corrected some of the errors. I don't know if they fixed any of the ambiguities. People seem to speak as if it's lacking any, but I'm not sure most people play the Grand Campaign. I looked at like Marco's review of it, and he's totally enthralled by the new version. Never saw the old, but never played the campaign game. He didn't want to dig into it, didn't have time, whatever, and just looked at the tactical situations. But again, his sort of grasp on the history, the military history, is less than most of us, I think. He's more of a game player who is learning the history with the games to a large extent. So, he wouldn't note that, oh boy, this really seems to get Napoleonic combat wrong. And, I think I said this before, either that or responded in a comment. Somebody in the BGG boards mentioned that the game plays more like World War I, but with the French having a big advantage so that they can push the enemy lines around. I don't know if it feels quite like that. I don't feel like I have contiguous front lines. I do have a lot of forces spread out, but I tend to try to pinpoint at a single location, and then the reinforcements come in if they do. But the thing is, nobody wants to really extend the battles, so they all end up being kind of skirmishes. I don't know. It doesn't really feel like World War One to me, but it sure the hell doesn't feel like the Napoleonic Wars in terms of the tactical stuff. Does the withdrawal chip put enough in? It puts enough. Does it put too much? Well, it was too painful for me to play with, and I feel like it does kind of make the battles. So I don't think it's as likely to create really decisive battles. I think what it's likely to do is make the pain of withdrawal a little bit heavier. That's what it feels like to me, because you still can't risk a decisive battle if you've got odds against you. The daylight begins to wane. You know, I don't know if it was funny because this week was the first time I left the house and it was light. Not fully light, but a little bit light. But I think, I don't know, I saw something that makes me think that the daylight savings is coming into effect soon. I don't know when it actually happens. It might be today, whatever. I got to check my my clock downstairs. I didn't think about it. I saw a post that made me think of it. But, you know, we're coming up to that where it switches over and like daylight is at reasonable times. We're in the September turn. There's possibility of weather, and I rolled it, and the Russian map is wet. That's pretty likely. I've got to think real hard about the Spanish situation, when I want to push them into neutrality. Maybe I want to start the Swedish war. It's not trivial for Russia to end the Swedish war, so starting it now might tie them up a little bit. But anyway, we are on all the neutrals. And they get nothing good. All right, a number of naval actions ended up with a couple of Spanish and English fleets damaged. Meanwhile, the French got a big hit, brought the English up to 30% on there. That doesn't actually add anything, the way I see it. If I had transports, I would have to try to bring two troops out to do actions against bases stuff, but I don't have that anymore. And, well, let's roll for... And that's going to be fine for the attrition roll. -2, let's do the Swedish roll, because I'm going to want to push the Spaniards this turn. That's good enough. So now, Sweden becomes pro-French. And Russia is at war with Sweden. During next production, I have to put, I'm going to do it right away, 5 infantry and a cav, and a Russian leader with a value of 2. And then the Russians need a 12. If I use a point, I can drop that down to an 11. Or I could try to attack Sweden, but I am not able to do that because I can't go anti-French. I'm under peace conditions right now. By pushing Spain out in the alliance phase, that's before the reinforcement phase, we deny them their points of production. That's fine. I mean, they have some troops that they want to build. We didn't get a bonus production ourselves. We shifted all of our stuff. I'm leaving Napoleon there for another turn, as I expect the beginning of the Spanish War to be pretty easy. And I guess we do the English for what they're worth. Nothing exciting at all happened. Oh, do the English have any production left? I had 2. I don't think I had any ships with markers on them. Oh yeah, I had 1. Let's get this one recovered. Down to 1 point. And now, that's a Spanish ship, right? A couple of Spanish ships. This is an English ship. And we're really actually in a dangerous position at this point, where forgot to check the US. There's a chance. Yeah. Something like there should be a track, you know, like a Treaty of Ghent track or something. Because if you roll really shitty, it should make it worse. I don't know. I just I don't like the it's just over or it's not. Like you should be able to commit more troops and make things better. Maybe pursue it more heavily. I don't know. There are definitely options for that. The Russians are able to drop a production point into either Sweden or the Ottomans, and we're going to do that to try to prevent the Swedes from being really a problem. Anyway, back to watching videos and playing my stupid game. By the way, my stupid video game thing, it's not like I really liked it. And I still kind of do. I like the kind of thinking and the kind of play that it has in it. The problem is it doesn't do what the games were intended to, which was to let me like listen to the news or whatever while I'm playing. The current game that I'm playing is it's another one of these gacha games, but it's like it requires me to act quickly. Like, just about everything in it is these battles where it takes, you know, a minute or so to fight each round of the battle. And then in between rounds, you have to, like, select new purchases for, you know, for your fighters. And it's just, it doesn't allow me what I'm used to. Raid and this other one I was playing, Foundation, which was kind of cool, but I don't know. The gameplay for this one just makes me happier, the actual gameplay, but it engages me too much is maybe the issue. But the actual gameplay for those allowed me to more or less just, oh yeah, I'm fighting, yeah, I'm doing this, whatever. And I just let it run on its own, you know, and didn't do a lot. In both cases, maybe I had to stop, turn off my video, and listen and think for a little bit. But most of the game was just being there clicking. Most of this game isn't. Like most of the time with this game, I don't have to do anything at all. Like I'm not playing, but I'm just waiting for points to accumulate or whatever. Okay, here we are in October. The weather ended up the same. Clear everywhere except wet in Russia. Check the production. Russia's got its war to handle. I don't know. Yeah, the neutrals do have an alliance phase. The neutral alliance phase comes after everything else, actually. So we got big production in Austria and Russia. Just realized I forgot to roll for the Spanish. First of all, they should be down another one for last turn. For whatever it matters, if the French decide to chicken out or whatever. But I forgot to roll the Spanish production. Meanwhile, the French fleets have kept things kind of equal, but we lost another ship. It's looking iffy. Spain gets 1. We're going to just build that over here with Costanos, wherever he is. The English can actually move the Spaniards as well, I believe, because they're neutral. So I can try to figure out some sort of better defensive situation than France has left me in. And after a good attrition roll that didn't cause any damage, French get their production roll. Get that later. Napoleon's still in Paris. No bonus though. Now the French go to war with Spain. This is something they're definitely allowed to do under the rules, because they booted Spain from being pro-French. This is like the one case I think you can declare war legitimately in the rules, is if you boot someone from pro-French to neutral, then you can attack them. Now, other countries can go to war with France with no problem because they can convert to being anti-French. So that's never an issue, right? Except maybe there seems to be like some kind of possible scripting limitation to doing it if you don't have, like you would, I don't know, because it doesn't separate the two games. The one where a player has any kind of agency over themselves and where they're defined by the alliance roles, when they go into the special rules for each country, which seem to be general and affect both things. And I'm certainly playing them that way because without them, the game doesn't really work historically. But you have to use, some kind of discretion as to how much they apply. Anyway, the French are invading Spain. That means we go to Spanish city points. They're already knocked down to 12 from that initial sweep in. A lot of the meat's, spread out around it. And they get their new force pool, and also, maybe even more importantly, the Brits get their captives back. And what is this shit? This is the Hanoverian stuff that I can't build. Okay. Yeah. That would be about it, I guess. I'm just trying to think. I think I've done everything. I've moved things around here a little bit. And Austria's in kind of a... not sure there's a hell of a lot of French here. The French have been devoting so much effort. Like this turn, they built another ship. I don't remember where I put it. Up here in Antwerp. They built another ship because we feel like we have the English on the rocks so hard that maybe we can, keep them kind of out of the war for the most part. Because without Wellington and his troops, Spain probably would have been a pretty big problem. But, and, the American war is keeping the English out of Spain anyway, essentially. Spanish troops trying to move forward. They're going to have their better forces. We got to do the anti-French stuff, though, which starts out with the Navy. They switched to, because the Spanish city points switch so often, I'm using this production track instead of the one over there. Again, bring more stuff closer to me. I could conceivably use the Alliance display. What's not available? The only thing that's new, the shipping thing, which I'm over there when I'm doing some of it anyway, and the weather. Everything else is in the old game. I could just shift all of it onto here. The game year takes up a hell of a lot less space. because this just covers 1805 to 1815. I don't really view that as something that I have to access very often, and honestly, I don't feel like the month is something I have to access all that often either. But I may end up porting everything over onto this chart that I can. Almost got out of the U.S. war if they'd been able, if they were able to spend points, but they're not ever. They would have gotten something there. Now, I still have an English production point, so I'm going to spend that to repair a ship. I just placed that one. Yeah, that ship is more important to me than the one out there. But now for Spanish production, we use these points, and I have 12 points. Infantry are going to cost me 6. Militia only cost me 4, and I have to build them before I'm allowed to build any of my infantry. But the real question is, what about my partisans? Now we have rules on partisans. Unfortunately, I don't have the Spanish rules on partisans, but I think they're the same shit, which is basically they're going to be useful for cutting supply lines because they can attack a single strength point or whatever, which is usually what you're going to be, creating your supply lines with, and knocking that out. I don't feel like that's particularly effective right now. So we're going to build, I guess, with our 12 points, and I don't think we get a die roll anymore on this. I guess 3 militia. Initially, Spanish production is already high, so if they got their full 20 points of production, they would be able to build 3 full infantry with that. That's why I'm saying I don't think they get a die roll for it. They are already more than mobilized. Anyway, I guess I try to figure out what I'm gonna do to try to defend Spain. And a little bit of shifting around there. Not really engaging yet. Still a fair amount open. Like Valencia is likely going to fall. Ciudad Rodrigo. It's not pretty by any means. I did move these over here. I haven't moved the alliance stuff yet. We're getting everything we can over there. Hey, I forgot to move the this thing down. Gotta remember last time I left it at 30, so it was like 37 when it should have been at 27. It's back down. I got up at 4 or so, 4 or 5, somewhere in there, and obviously it's a lot later now. But I really should go shopping today. A constant, issue. It's not like I'm out of food, but I'm running low on a couple of things that I kind of really need, and I would delay. I'm probably going to anyway, but I would delay, but it's supposed to rain the rest of the week. We had a beautiful day yesterday. Saturday. Yesterday wasn't bad. Today's not supposed to be bad, but somehow it's just really hard for me to convince myself. Anyway, here we are over on this chart now. Let's check the weather. It's getting into the ugly part, right? November. This could be really bad. It's not. It's just winter across the board. Which, in the basic game, that's as bad as it gets, right? But in some ways, especially in the South, we could get the poor weather, which is really horrible. Normally, poor weather is worse here in the more northern climates or whatever. But whatever. Let's take a look at our neutrals production. And it's crap as usual. Got out of the war with Sweden. I'm allowed to bring the troops in at any production city, supposedly on my next turn, because the alliance phase happens down here. I'm going to do it now because otherwise I'm just not going to remember. French managed to break out here, and they're also still floating around in the Med. They managed 10 points on the trade chart, which is huge. Really the biggest hit that I've seen yet on the commerce rating. We're up around 37 now, which means we're getting close to that 40. Now 30 doesn't do anything because the English can't comply. But 40 doesn't really do much else either. Yeah, we're pretty much as bad as it gets. At some point or another, you would almost argue that England would maybe think about suing for peace, you know, but that would make the commercial rating too important in the game. There's certainly an argument that, like, if you cut England off completely for long enough, it would be exceedingly potent of an effect. As it stands, though, it is still a pretty hefty effect. We're beginning to get to the point where England can't build their navies, and well, we're at the point where England basically can't get to build their navies. I think they're out of points, to be honest. Here's my production track. Yeah, they're out of points. They don't produce points, and they're not going to be able to recover their losses as long as they're staying above that 20% level. And the further I push it, the harder it is for the Brits to get back into a position where they can build their navies. So eventually we'll get to a point where we can start winning the naval war in Europe itself. And this is important because the French still have ships to build. Sure, it's only one. Of course, with Spain now not on their side, they're no longer getting the addition of Spanish birds. My stellars. They're no longer getting the addition of the Spanish fleets, but conceivably Spain might be able to utilize fleets against them. But they've got to build all of their ground units because they're in a state of invasion right now. So it's not going to happen anytime soon. And I'm actually assuming that I'm going to win the Peninsular War here. I'm trying to think if I've ever played the Peninsular War scenario on its own. I don't tend to play scenarios. I do know that it feels easier to beat Spain, but maybe I'm just being sanguine about it when it comes down to it. Anyhow, guess we'll make the attrition check. That probably won't be too bad. Troops are nicely spread out. I've only got like one in the 6 to 10 range, and it would have had to get to 11 even with Spain and winter and all that. But it is somewhat dangerous. I forgot about Denmark. Oh, they're not big. Okay. I got to pay attention because I have like reasonable sized forces in garrisons now. Guess that puts us on production with the +1 for Nappy still. Not going to help. The kind of tedious situation of trying to invade, and we got to take everything. But trying to invade and keeping my supplies in line and everything, that whole stupid, let's move the stuff from the back first to see where our supply lines, how many troops we can get up to the front and everything. It's just a painful way to have to play the game. I have to count the things that I took as I moved. So I thought, okay, I'll count what Spain holds and subtract that from 20. Or just, that'll be their number. Well, something's wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, maybe I miscounted. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 that they're holding. Now, I'm pretty sure that this game, let's see where the Spanish production is, says put them at 20. At the start of the scenario, the non-French player should record 20 Spanish and 4 Portuguese production. This may be the rules that were cut from the Peninsular Campaign scenario in the original, which is where this is actually covered. But I'm not sure. See, French are already set up in places. I'm not sure that that's what's intended. So they have Madrid, Burgos, Cordoba, and Barcelona. I don't know. Madrid's definitely one of those, so that's 2. What else do they have here? I gotta find these places. This is fucking annoying. Oh, that's satellite forces. Burgos, Cordoba, Lisbon, Toledo, Barcelona, and Pamplona. I don't know. Unfortunately, that does not cover it. Now, the campaign game rules, where's production? I'm looking at the original campaign game rules because I don't have these. Spain and Portugal are subject to regular campaign reinforcements. If they're invaded, the invading state immediately joins. Use the reinforcements in place of the regular. In addition, the units specified are added. I'm not convinced that 20 points is correct as a baseline, nor the 4 points for Portugal. Portugal has 2, 4, 5, 6. Now, if I was playing with the 20 to begin with, in any time that I played the Grand Campaign, yeah, that would heavily affect things. Let's take a look once again at the scenario holdings. What do we got? We got Madrid. That's a 2 point. Burgos. I don't know where Burgos is. I thought it was along the coast. It's hard to see on that fucking map. No, Burgos is here. Okay, that's 4. Cordoba is going to be a main city, so that's 6. Lisbon, let's not count that. Toledo brings it to 8. Barcelona brings it to 10. And now we look at the I think but I can't tell you for sure that the Spaniards are supposed to get 2 points per major city and 1 point per minor city, and not what I gave them before, which, I gave them too few points. Rather than what's written in here, which is that they just get to 20, that's from the Peninsular War where some of the territory is already taken. So that's what I'm going to work with now instead. I'm going to work with the number from here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. They currently have 20. Should they have gotten more points by that? Yeah, they should have. But, I'm cutting the difference between what they had before. So we're gonna keep them at 20 there, and give them all the cities. That's gonna make it a little harder. And again, I'm not sure which way I did it when I played before, but they definitely, if I played with that 20 base, which is how it's written in here, but I don't feel like that's what I would have done from the original War and Peace. So I think it's going to be relatively easy to take the Spanish out. Anyway, I'm not going to give them the additional points that they should have gotten last turn by that rule. And that puts me to, since we're not fighting anywhere, to the Allied phase, and let's see if the Brits can do anything about those boats. We're able to damage a French fleet here, squeeze it back into the Med, get something protecting the Atlantic. Up here, I sent Nelson out to try to catch these ships with a damaged fleet, by the way. I didn't get any other ships. I didn't get any. I got an AAB in the Spanish Main over there, and the Spanish troops moving forward. I'm kind of afraid to attack the French, but on the other hand, I probably should. But the only thing that could have was Palafox here. He actually has sort of the regular Spanish army, but it's just so hard to stand up against them. I don't want to build partisans yet until, it's not stacks of 4 or 5 strength points everywhere. It's instead a single strength point that a partisan can actually fuck with. And that gets me to the end of November. Put these up here. Yeah. Big thought for Austria. Hey, do we want to try to take advantage of this situation while most of the French army is away and we've got a lot of our forces built? Maybe close to half? I think not. I think what's here is dangerous enough. And this is where I kind of want to play with the fog of war, is that the Austrians might not know exactly how many strength points the French have deployed against them. I have a vague idea. I outnumber them. I could definitely put some hurt on them. But I don't know. I mean, England is like, come on, man, you got to save our bacon here. So that's so often the kind of thing that you hear in Empires in Arms. This game, I'm less familiar. Well, first of all, I've never played the grand campaign of this as opposed to Empires in Arms. Could never get anybody to want to play this, in a multiplayer situation opposed. It was hard, when I was big into this was when, I was in high school, basically. I managed to get some buddies to play Third Reich once. And I don't know, it was like after school or something. And we set up, the whole campaign. I explained the rules and everything. And by the time I got through the rules, a couple of guys had to leave because it was time for their dinner, and it was such a kind of a joke type of thing. I mean, they all would have been welcome to eat it at my place. My mom was always cool about that. But, it was, it may have been a Friday or something, but still, it was like just too complex a game to set up on that kind of a fly situation. We played other things that were long and everything, and usually didn't finish them. I'm thinking things like Kingmaker. We would set up, play for a few hours, and be like, or Machiavelli. Cold weather everywhere. Production, the Austrians are going to get a little bit of a bonus. Might tilt them. I don't know. The problem is, it's not until March that Russia and Prussia can come in. And we really would like to hit the triple hammer, at least more or less. Anyway, let me do their production. Get to the French boats. Minimal gains for the French commerce raiders, even though they went for something in the North Sea. They actually tried to hunt the damaged English squadron out there. It didn't work. They didn't get anything. They got 1 point total. That puts me on the attrition roll. And again, it's winter, so... Oh, that's not going to be good. That's going to hurt just about everything by a point. And there are a lot of everythings. Normal production again, and I'm seriously considering sending Napoleon down into Spain just because... he's just so good, Not... so... I feel like the leaders I have are good enough because it's only fucking Spain and everything, but Spain historically did a lot of damage. Speaking of historical stuff, the scripting that pushes Austria to having to dump their whole force pool, build their whole force pool before they declare war, if that were real, if that were meant to be in the multiplayer game. I got 24 infantry left. That would take me another year to produce. Now, that is kind of historical, but because they held off until 1809, it's right, but they also held off because the situation was kind of dangerous. Everybody kind of held off. And, the most interesting thing is Russia doesn't join in on the post-Tilsit period. It's Russia's activities outside of, they don't declare war again. It's France who invades Russia. And why? Because Russia is not abiding by part of the Treaty of Tilsit, which is the continental system. What I feel is probably more appropriate, the game has certain victory conditions that kind of fit the continental system. Now, if you remember, Nations in Arms had something about the continental system, but it doesn't work very well. It's not worded in a way that really works or makes sense. It leaves a lot of ambiguity in place. But here, there is a victory condition in the two-player game, I think. If the French player controls Paris and Moscow and controls at least 35 port cities anywhere on the map at the instant of control. If Tilsit forced the French to be allied, forced the Russians to be allied to France, so that their ports were out, about a year is about the right amount of time for them, maybe a little longer to be honest, for them to kind of try to be abiding by by the continental system. And the conquest rules allow you to hold everything, but not Königsberg in Prussia. It allows you to hold everything in Austrian territory. And therefore, I could look and say, okay, everything is, pro-French for the most part, and I could count up those port cities and all this stuff. Unfortunately, I don't have an actual count because I suspect some of the ports on here are not ports over there. Like we have Boulogne and Calais, which count as ports in this game. Now Boulogne, Calais and Boulogne, yeah, they are both. Huh. So if I did a count, and I wish I had written it down, of all the cities. Now I'm not sure everything corresponds. Like I'm not sure all the pieces are on the map. There's stuff like in southern Italy that I would have to just say that's pro-French or whatever. It was a pretty big number. But I think if I occupied this, Stralsund, Lübeck, Bremen, then it comes down to the question of how much of Spain do I have to control? That's really the issue. And I know that it was some of it. But I wouldn't have invaded Spain. I might have been able, like, if Treaty of Tilsit counted against that, I would have been able to say, okay, look, I've got enough. Spain is pro-French, and the English can't do anything about it except for the timer on the track or whatever. Russia, similarly, with Tilsit, would be complying for that first 12 months with things. I honestly think that I would have ended up with an automatic victory that way, and I think that's why they didn't bake it in. Again, Empires in Arms handles it very, very differently. It ends up denying and depriving the Brits of money, which is more or less, not to the effect that this commerce rating is doing. Anyway, I guess I got to move my units. Still dread doing that. There's just so many pieces. And the French gained nothing this turn in Spain. I pushed up next to Madrid with a hope to attack, attacking along the river, even though Madrid's on this side of this river, and you'd expect a river crossing or whatever. Yeah, that doesn't, I think, happen because this river's flowing into that river hex. Again, the way the old map handles rivers is one of my big gripes. Anyhow, Marmont doesn't have enough troops to besiege Palafox, and he doesn't really want to fight him with too few troops. He's got additional stuff coming forward. Not sure I'm thrilled with being here, but it's where I am. I also pushed up here. Didn't have quite enough troops to hit either Blake or Cuesta with stuff that could have reached, so I'm gathering my forces. It's dangerous to do. I'm liable to take more attrition due to it, but got to do what you got to do in this game. And you can see all the miners now have taken attrition losses, so they're, trying to rebuild and whatever. Not pleasant, but anyhow, that's going to put it over on the Brits and the Spaniards. I keep forgetting the Spaniards. Hope I'm building troops with them. I think I am. Navy didn't do a whole hell of a lot. We did drive the French fleet in the North Sea back into port, damaging it. Over there, we got another marker somewhere or another. I think in the Caribbean, I think we booted that up to 3, but we didn't catch any of the ships. Guess it's attrition time. I don't know. It's winter, in Spain. Probably some damage. Going to launch a couple of attacks. Palafox is going to try to hit Marmont here. Again, on the river, so whatever. And Blake is going to try to hit Eugene. See if the Spanish army can do anything. I've got, like, I think Blake's forces mostly is majority militia, but that's okay, because that means I can take all my hits on militia and get a boost in my morale so that I don't start surrendering right away. But it does put me at big minuses depending on what I'm facing. First battle didn't go well at all. Now we're D1 and we don't get a chance to recover from it, which means we're demoralized to begin with, even though we're at full. Now, one of the weird things, again, because I don't have, even though I had done this before, there are no dedicated Portuguese units for the Spaniards, so they just have militia. So whenever I lose militia, I make a choice. And in this case, I'm like, yeah, I sent a leader over to grab this, and I'll be producing an extra unit of militia, maybe 2 each turn, based on Portugal's build pool. So why the hell not? I wasn't taking losses before, so, well, I was taking attrition losses maybe. Let's do the Palafox one now. I'm not thrilled with this either. At least I can fall back on the city. Fox can fall back into the city. Actually, I don't know. Probably can't. Probably has too many troops. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, he has too many troops. See, if I don't leave many, Marmont can besiege me. Now Marmont's out at 2, 3, so I'd have to leave a supply source here to do that. This is complicated and ugly. But if I stand out, I will surrender, which I don't want to do. So I obviously have to withdraw from this combat. Got bad rolls. In that case, I was at 2 to 1 at 0, and I got a D1. French got nothing. That was about as good a fight as the Spanish can put up, probably. Anyway, I think I have to fall away. How many troops does Marmont have? 4. Which means I'd have to leave 5 behind to protect me. Again, it feels like the prolonged demoralization rules, which I don't remember. Were they in the original? They were in the optionals for whatever reason, for the campaign game, I think. Rather than, I hate there being 2 different sets. Oh, maybe not, maybe not. Oh, that's Fortress and Sieges. Where's the optionals? Here we go. Demoralized combat, that's not it. It's the lasting demoralization, which is an interesting little rule, which I feel like helps a little bit. So there's nothing in the optional persistent demoralization rule, whatever, that says that entering a city gets rid of your demoralization status. But if you're under siege, it goes away. So that's kind of how I'm playing it. Like, normally just walking into a city space doesn't fix you. But Marmont does not have enough troops to besiege this, so he can't immediately. I think he could immediately follow up if 2 fewer left there, even though it's the Spanish turn. He might not get to roll for the siege, but he would get to place it. I don't know. There's a lot of fuzzy stuff around the edges in these rules in some cases. Anyway, that is the end of 1807. And there's a lot I have to do to fix between turns, or between years. And then we're going to load this up. I think the main thing is going to be putting, I think maybe the only thing, is putting forces in the force pools. Sound weird, and I think the new version does the same thing. I don't remember what Jerome Bonaparte did. I feel like I gotta go look him up now. Joseph was made king of Spain. He is not a minor country leader. Jerome is. Just weird. I'm gonna see what Jerome was actually given. Like, North Italy was given to Messina, right? I'm trying to think what Jerome might have been given. Let me go look it up. He was made king of Westphalia. Kind of, you know, when you own all of Europe, you can deal out little bits and parts to your family. All right. I also switched, I'm starting a new pot of tea, or a new cup of tea, which is kind of an issue. I was still actually debating going today. I know I had said I wouldn't. It was kind of pretty for a little bit. It's supposed to be nicer today than tomorrow, and it may rain tomorrow and stuff like that. I'm not actually even out of ham yet, which is kind of my defining feature at this point. But I could do a kind of lighter cart if I go this week. And it was really kind of appealing to me, but I realized I made Earl Grey earlier in the morning, and I have to finish this cup and put the tea bag in, and it'll mean that I'm using a more expensive tea bag anyway, because in my other cup I use, I don't know what it is, a Tetley bag that is pretty decent, that I actually put in this cup with the Earl Grey to get another, you know, another brewing off of two more expensive bags. So I'm getting like 3/2 of a cup off each bag instead of the usual 1 cup that I get off of my black or green tea. I don't know why, you know, it seems like a big deal to me. It really isn't. We're talking about a difference of maybe 5 cents, you know. And somehow, though, it's like, oh my God, I can't do this error. You know, I have to take my trip because I probably won't finish my tea on the way down and back. Well, on my way down, which means I pour some of it out in the sink, and I was like, come on, dude, don't be cheap about like a couple of pennies on your way home from the shopping. You spend like $4 or $5 on a drink to get you home. To countermix issues with this one too. Now I may have lost some pieces. For example, the Polish, I was short a cav, that's for sure. Switzerland, they're supposed to get an infantry each turn. I have all my pieces on the board. The last Swiss piece I had left was a 2-point infantry. I'm giving them both of them instead of one. Again, things might be mixed up in here. Those are Saxons. I have way too many Saxons and not enough Swiss, you know, because the Saxons don't ever get any additional troops. So I don't know why I have extras. It's just, there's something really fucking weird, the design of this, and I remember it being problematic all along, which is why I have counters that are marked up and whatnot. Yeah, the last Swiss piece went here. I have tons of Westphalians. They are done growing. I don't need all of these. They have more 1-point infantry than they can possibly have. It's like the game was not, you know, they didn't try to balance the pieces out for what it was. And this has persisted into the new version. I know I was extolling this one as having, you know, enough counters, but it actually doesn't. And I don't think I'm missing many pieces, you know. And in fact, that Polish thing, that may actually be baked into the original for what it's worth. So I don't know. They've maintained all of the flaws of the old game. Anyway, I've put everything out. Now there's something else that happens. So let's look at the dates. Here in 1808, right? Austria can build Landwehr starting in 1800 in June. I'll put a little not a flag. I'll put a Landwehr out there. Now, they don't actually have any Landwehr, do they? The old game, when they were conquered, they got 10 Landwehr and 5 Landwehr and a cav each year after the conquest. I wonder if that's still on the new one. Let me look at the card for the new game. As far as I know, they just copied everything, so probably. Yeah. After Austria is conquered once, add 1 cavalry each year. So I should have 1 more Austrian cav kicking around. I don't know what the deal is with the Landwehr. How many they get. See Landwehr rules for additional information. Okay, so they actually did upgrade that. That impresses me. One per month. Interesting. Okay, well, we'll play with the new rules for that. They got a cav. They should get another cav, actually. They didn't get one last year. They should get one for last year and one for this year. What about Prussia? Prussia's been conquered. Nope, they just get their Landwehr. And that is not yet. I don't know when they get theirs. It's probably on that chart, but it may not be because it may have to do with there being... If Prussia is currently anti-French, beginning immediately after Prussia becomes anti-French for the second time, 2 Prussian Landwehr are added. Wow. Looks to me like they only get 2. They're supposed to get 2 per year here, but 10 additional. And this doesn't help me because it just says see Landwehr for additional information. They should get kind of crap for Landwehr then. I don't know. I mean, the Austrians definitely get more. They get 10 to begin with and 5 per turn by the original. I don't know. I really don't know what to do about this. It looks like they only get 2 Landwehr, period. No, during each anti-French production, no, they get 2 per turn. Oh, this is weird. So the Austrians only get 1 per month if they're anti-French, whereas the Prussians get 2 per, but over here, the Prussians get about half per year of what the Austrians get. I don't know what they're trying to do, if they're trying to fix something, you know, that was wrong with the original. Prussia has a pretty low manpower pool, and maybe they relied more on their Landwehr, and the decision was made that the original game just doesn't give them enough troops to represent what they're supposed to have. I don't know. We'll go with the new rules though. So that'll be a lot of Landwehr for Prussia, but they only get them while they're at war. So their force pool doesn't increase otherwise, which is weird. Okay, we will send this up. We got the beginning of the Spanish invasion. Frankly, I'm not sure how you can defend Spain. The only real hope is that these guys can come in and put enough pressure on France that they can't devote themselves entirely to the Spanish campaign. Historically, you can look at the scenarios. The Peninsular War. See, but this starts with French already in Spain. But those may have been non-invasive French who were helping attack Portugal or something. Do we have the turns? I mean, they've got to be somewhere, right? Got May 1808 is where the deposition of the king happened. You'd think this would tell me somewhere really easy to see, but these rules are never easy to see, what the starting and end turns are. Here we go. Well, we got the end conditions. Wait, at the end of the scenario, the scenario, finally, here it is. It's in the victory conditions. That's not where it belongs, but I somehow knew it was. It's just all the way at the back. The scenario begins in May 1808 and ends April 1814, i.e., they were in it until the surrender. But notably, the Wagram scenario happens within it. And that's basically what we're looking at. We're looking at a little bit of an accelerated situation. I brought the French in early. I don't know. Good, bad, it's hard to tell. I don't want to start the war with Spain when Austria's just about got their force pool built. It'll keep everybody at peace, but it doesn't make sense. So within the game terms, I want to invade Spain, and there doesn't seem to be anything in the new rules that prevent me from doing that. There's plenty of scripting as it is, so I wouldn't be asking for more. Get all this stuff out of here. That's in my way. All right, we'll load this up.